The night felt staged long before anyone said a word. Polished crystal, low light, the kind of hush that makes insults sound like compliments. My name is Mara Ellison. I'm 33 years old, a systems analyst in Portland, Oregon, and I have finally learned how to keep my hands still under a white tablecloth. I used to rescue cruel sentences with a smile. Tonight, I let them land. We were at an upscale restaurant for my parents' anniversary. The linen was so crisp it could cut. The chandeliers were cold and bright. My mother, Elaine, thrives in rooms like this. My father, Robert, prefers a quiet corner and a heavy glass. I made the reservation, like always. I told myself I would say congratulations, keep my tone neutral, and leave early. I rehearsed neutrality the way other people practice scales. Then my sister stood. Bianca lifted her champagne and found the room with her voice. "Here's to the family optimist," she said, "who still thinks she matters." Laughter cracked in a sharp, clean line. Mother's laugh was the loudest, full and pleased, the sound she saves for someone tripping in public. Father stared at the wet ring his water glass left on the cloth, as if the stain might explain me to him. I reached for coffee instead of courage and said nothing. Silence is not surrender, it's a fuse. For years, generosity in our family turned into duty, and duty hardened into identity. I wasn't a daughter, I was an account. I kept credit lines alive, bridged emergencies that never ended, and signed forms no one else wanted to touch. Earlier this month, a bank approved my parents' dream home, but only with my name as guarantor. "Just paperwork," Bianca had said, sliding the pen across the page with a smile that stuck to the skin. "We could never do this without you." I signed. It felt like swallowing a marble. Tonight, sweetness turned sour and told the truth. The check arrived and settled in front of me out of habit. The server's hand paused, muscle memory doing what manners should not. I let the leather folder sit there, closed. I did not reach. I watched it the way you watch a door when you've already decided you're the one who walks through it first. There was a hum under my skin, a live wire I could finally hear. I tasted the room, salt, citrus, a little theater, and knew what came next had nothing to do with paying for dessert. If you've ever sat at a table like this, with a bill that isn't a bill and a family that isn't a refuge, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. I want to know which city taught you to hear the fuse. I left the restaurant without a scene. The night was cool and careful, the kind of Portland night that makes storefronts look cleaner than they are. I walked to my car, felt the leather folder's ghost sitting where I hadn't touched it, and breathed until the air steadied. The fuse in me was quiet, but lit. The drive home was a straight run on familiar streets, amber light sliding across the windshield like a metronome. I didn't turn on music. I wanted to hear the small sounds, tires over paint, blinkers ticking, my own breath counting the distance between decision and action. I parked and didn't get out right away. The lot was nearly empty. In the sudden stillness, I thought of every time I had said yes because it kept dinner peaceful or made someone else sleep better. The habit felt old on me, like a coat I'd outgrown and still wore because it was what people expected to see. Inside my apartment, I didn't turn on the overheads. I set a single lamp on low and took out the folder I kept too close to my desk. Mortgage copies, business cards. The email from the loan officer with the subject line that had sounded friendly and landed like a hook. Final approval, next steps. My name at the bottom looked obedient. I traced it with a finger and felt nothing warm. I checked the time. The bank's late branch kept lights on for shift workers and night people. It wasn't glamorous, but it stayed open for the kind of errands most folks prefer to do in daylight. I put the papers in a clean envelope, grabbed my wallet, and went back downstairs. The night branch sat in a small plaza next to a dry cleaner and a taco place still steaming up its windows. Inside the bank, everything was too bright. Pens on chains, plastic plants, the smell of printer heat and faint coffee. Behind the counter was a woman whose face had the kind of kindness that doesn't perform. Her badge read Alvarez. "Evening," she said. "What can we do for you?" "I need to withdraw as guarantor on a mortgage application," I said. "Effective tonight." She didn't look surprised. She asked for ID, searched the file, and nodded. "Yes, Ms. Ellison, we can process that now. It will require a few signatures." She turned the monitor so I could see. Terms, acknowledgments, the part about understanding consequences. She didn't rush the explanation. She didn't slow walk it either. When she slid the forms across, the paper made a dry sound that reminded me of new curtains being pulled for the first time. "Here," she said, touching the first tab. "And here. And the last one confirms you understand we'll notify the lender tonight." The pen scratched. Not dramatic, not heroic, just ink doing its job. A zipper closing a wound. My hand was steady. I signed my name like I owned it. Ms. Alvarez stamped the copies, stapled a set for me, and tucked them into a clean sleeve. "You'll receive an email within the hour," she said. "We'll also send a certified letter. Do you want a printed confirmation while you're here?" "Yes." The printer shook out a page. It was plain and perfect. I folded it in precise thirds and slid it behind my driver's license, then moved it to the sleeve where it belonged. I wanted it safe, but I wanted to feel it once first, the weight of paper that gave me back the weight of myself. "Thank you for staying late," I said. "We're open," she answered with a small smile, "but you're welcome." Outside, the air felt different, not sweeter, clearer. The taco place had closed. A bus hissed to a stop and sighed again as it pulled away. I sat in the driver's seat and rested my forehead on the steering wheel for a count of 5. No speeches, no victory music, just a clean line from thought to action. At home, I put the sleeve in my desk drawer and locked it. I opened my notebook to a fresh page and wrote in small letters at the top, "No more paying to be related." Underneath, I wrote the date and time, then a simple list. Signature withdrawn, lender notified, confirmation printed, copies stored. 4 lines that felt like 4 walls around a room I could finally sleep in. I picked up my phone and typed a message to Caleb. "Home safe, not discussing, doing." I watched the 3 dots appear and vanish. His reply landed a moment later. "I'm here. Rest." I turned off the lamp. The apartment settled. Pipes hummed in the walls. Somewhere outside, a siren came and went without asking me to move. I lay still and let the fuse burn silent in the dark, not toward an explosion, but toward a switch. I woke before the alarm, the room pale with winter light. For a moment, I forgot what I had done. Then I saw the bank sleeve on my desk, neat as a verdict, and I remembered. The first call came at 7:58. My father's name filled the screen. I let it ring. At 8:03, my mother called. At 8:05 again. By 8:09, the display read missed calls. 5. I set the phone face down and made coffee the way I always do. Water to the line, scoop level, filter smoothed flat. The calm work of hands gave my thoughts a lane to follow. At 8:14, Bianca tried. Then unknown. Then no caller ID. I took my mug to the table and opened my notebook to a clean page. I wrote the date at the top and printed a single word in block letters, ledger. On the left margin, I drew a column and labeled it time. On the right, notes. Under time, I wrote 7:58, Robert. Next line, 8:03, Elaine. 8:05, Elaine. 8:09, missed. 5. I did not color it with feelings. I logged it. At 8:22, a text from Bianca slid across the screen. "You've wrecked us." I did not answer. I unlocked the phone, took a screenshot, and printed the timestamp in the notebook. 8:22, text, Bianca. "You've wrecked us." I boxed the entry and drew a small lock beside it. Not a box to check. a reminder that this was a closed door. By 8:30, the phone was steady humming. Calls bled into one another. Some numbers I recognized from holidays and graduations. Some I did not. I turned the sound off and let the vibration mark the minutes. I kept logging 8:31, 8:34, 8:40. I described each in a short line: call, text, voicemail. I wrote only what happened, not what it meant. At 8:47, my mother texted, "We need to talk about family." The phrasing was soft, worn at the edges. I took a screenshot and wrote her sentence exactly. At 8:52, my father called back to back. At 8:55, a new text from Bianca. "The bank is calling us non-stop. Fix it." The word fix sat there like a command that had worked for years. I copied it into Ledger and under notes wrote, "Demand, no apology." I showered and dressed while the phone vibrated on the kitchen counter. I moved like it was any other weekday, hair pulled back, clean shirt, jacket zipped. I put the phone in a drawer and pulled it out again. I didn't want it near me, and I didn't want it out of sight. At 9:12, an unknown number left a voicemail. I let the notification sit and wrote, 9:12, VM, unknown. At 9:30, I opened my laptop and set up a folder on the desktop named Proof. Inside, I created subfolders: calls, texts, voicemails. I forwarded screenshots to myself and saved each with a simple name: 0822, Bianca text, JPG. 0847, Elaine, text.jpg. I dragged them into place. The order calmed me. The neatness let me breathe. By 10:05, the calls slowed. The quiet felt false, the way a lull feels before a second wave. I made more coffee and reread the entries. Nothing dramatic lived on the page, just times and words. That was the point. I wasn't building a speech, I was building a record. At 10:27, Uncle Derek called. I let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, he tried again. I watched his name blink and fade. At 10:31, I listened. His voice was sunshine over a cloud he didn't name. He talked about the weather, the new market near his office, how families pull together when things get hard. Then he arrived at his purpose. "Maybe you could smooth this over, just for now." I saved the message to Proof voicemails and typed 10:31, VM, Derek. Smooth this over. I added a small asterisk to mark the pivot from small talk to ask. At 11:04, my cousin Marisa texted, "Everyone's worried. Mom looks awful. Would you please just help for now?" I screenshotted, saved, logged. At 11:20, no caller ID rang 3 times in a row. I did not pick up. I wrote it down. At 11:41, my mother called again. I watched it ring. The urge to answer moved through me like an old reflex. I let it pass. At noon, I ate standing up at the counter. Toast, an apple, nothing that needed a plate. I checked the drawer where the bank sleeve lay. I didn't open it. I knew what it said. I opened Ledger instead and drew a line across the page, a divider between morning and afternoon. Above the line, I wrote, "Morning Siege." Below it, new entries waited. At 12:18, a text from Bianca arrived. "We can forget last night if you sign again. Mom's sick over this." I saved it with the others, then added a note in small script. "Transaction dressed as remorse." I kept the phrasing plain but exact. At 12:36, a relative I barely knew sent a paragraph about blood and duty. I read the first sentence and stopped. Screenshot, save, log. By 1:05, the calls returned in a slow rotation. Father, mother, unknown. I turned the phone face down and slid it 2 inches away from my hand. I opened a fresh page and wrote, 1:07, begin archive routine daily. Under that, a checklist, export screenshots, download voicemails, timestamp file names, backup to drive. At 1:30, I backed up the folder to a portable drive and labeled it with a date. Proof copied over, a blue bar inching left to right. I watched it complete, then ejected the drive and set it in the desk drawer beside the bank sleeve. 2 documents, 2 kinds of quiet. The afternoon stretched ahead. The phone lay still for a long minute. I wrote that down too. Silence, 1:41 to 1:46, logged. At 2:10, the phone woke up again. Names in rotation, the same script in new voices. I closed the notebook, grabbed my keys, and drove to a market across town where no one knew me by sight. I told myself it was just groceries, bread, eggs, coffee grounds, the boring things that keep a week moving. I took a basket, turned down produce, and stopped. They were already there. My parents stood by the pears, both holding a manila folder like it was a life jacket. My mother's face was damp with effort. My father's jaw was set to the notch I knew from every argument that ever circled back to duty. "Paula," she began, then corrected herself. "Mara." She stepped closer. "Please, we can't live like this." "We've been up all night." My father cut in, voice level, eyes hard. "The bank gave us 3 days. Just sign again. No one has to know." I didn't look at the folder. I looked at their hands. "You're right," I said. "No one has to know, because I'm not signing." My mother flinched like I'd dropped a glass. My father leaned in a fraction. "You're being influenced," he said. "Someone's poisoning you against your own family." "No one's poisoning me," I answered. "I just stopped drinking what's always been served." I put the basket down and walked past them. I didn't hurry. I didn't look back. In the car, I wrote the scene in ledger. 237, grocery aisle, manila folder, demand to sign, accusation, poisoned, response logged. By late afternoon, the knocks started. 3 sharp raps, a pause, then the doorbell. I looked through the peephole and saw Bianca holding a folder to her chest like a choir book. I opened the door 3 inches and left the chain on. "Just sign," she said before hello. "Mom hasn't slept. Dad's blood pressure. This is getting ridiculous." "What's in it?" "Reapplication. They said they'll reinstate everything if you sign. It's 1 signature." "1 signature is how you built a house on mine," I said. She slid her foot forward into the gap, quick and practiced, heel wedging the door. "You're not walking away from this family." "I'm not walking away," I said. "You're dragging the family to a place I won't go." I pushed. She held for a beat, then pulled back, letting the door close with the soft click of a decision completing itself. Through the wood, she called, "When Mom hears you slammed..." I turned the deadbolt. Ledger, 512, doorstep, foot wedge. 1 signature, boundary enforced. At 6:40, my work phone rang. "Mara?" It was Tanya from HR, careful and professional. "We received a call earlier requesting your payroll and benefits information. The caller claimed to be you. It didn't match our voice file. We've locked your profile and flagged the attempt." "Thank you," I said. "Please note potential family impersonation." "I already did," she said. "We'll document and notify IT." Proof voicemails took the saved message from HR. Ledger, 6:43, HR spoof attempt, file locked, IT alerted, evening settled. The phone shifted strategies. A cousin posted something vague on Facebook about betrayal and selfish daughters. Relatives liked it in unison. I took a screenshot. Proof texts, social, 7:22, vague post, 23 reactions. Under notes, shame attempt via public fog. At 11:06, a new number texted, "You think you're safe behind that apartment door? Blood finds you." The phrasing was too dramatic for my mother and too clean for my father. I tagged it BI for Bianca in my head and saved it anyway. Proof texts, 11:06, unknown blood finds you.jpg. Ledger, 1106, threat adjacent language. No reply. I called Caleb. He picked up on the first ring and didn't fill the silence. They're escalating, I said. They will, he answered. They'll try every old door. I know, I said, looking at the neat stacks on my desk. The bank sleeve, the drive, the notebook open to today's entries. I'm done reacting. I'm documenting. Good, he said. Documentation isn't drama, it's gravity. After we hung up, I backed up proof to the drive again and labeled the new copy with the date and the word Eve. I shut the laptop, turned off the lamp, and let the room go dark. Behind the blackout curtains, the city kept moving. Inside, everything important was already still. Morning came clear and undecorated. I made coffee, opened the notebook to yesterday's last entry, 1106, threat adjacent language, and drew a line across the page. Under it, I wrote a heading, Cleanup. First stop was the bank. Not the night branch, the main one with the big windows that pretended money was sunlight. I brought only what I needed. ID, the joint account number, a short list. The teller wore a navy sweater and a steadiness I respected. I'm here to close a joint account titled Family Emergency Fund, I said. Transfer the remaining balance to my primary, then close it permanently. She checked the screen, confirmed my ID, and asked, Do you want to keep it open just in case? No, I said. No more cases. Understood. She printed a form. I signed. The register chirped. She handed me a closure receipt and a tiny envelope with the transfer confirmation. I folded both and slid them into the sleeve I carried in my bag. Ledger, 912, joint account closed, balance transferred, receipt filed. Still at the counter, I said, I also want to remove my name as an emergency contact from any accounts where it appears without my current, in-person consent. Add a note. No new joint activity, no verifications using my name without me present. She nodded and brought a supervisor. They tagged the profiles and printed confirmations. The paper stack grew modestly. I kept each page, date stamped, and put them behind the closure slip. Ledger, 927, emergency contact removed, notes added, confirmations printed, next call was insurance. I sat in my car, window cracked, and waded through a polite storm of hold music. When someone answered, I read from a simple script. Remove my name from any policy authorizations, add the no activity note, email me confirmation. It took time and no drama. By the end of the hour, I had 3 PDFs in my inbox and a calm that came from work, not hope. Then the attorney. Caleb had given me the name months ago, when later felt like a luxury. Attorney Vikram Singh's office smelled like paper and rain. We sat across a table that had seen more trouble than mine ever would. Tell me what happened, he said. I did, in order, with documents. He didn't look shocked. He looked like a mechanic listening to a rattle he knew by sound. We'll do 4 things, he said, ticking them off. 1. Update your estate plan, no family designations, assets to your chosen beneficiaries. 2. Revoke any powers of attorney previously granted to relatives, assigned to a trusted non-family agent. 3. Place fraud alerts across banks, insurance, and health records, and set up automatic flags on any file using your identity outside your consent. 4. Add institutional notes. Verification requests must route through this office. He drafted while I read. The language was exact, the way I wanted my piece to be. I signed, pen on paper, steady. He handed me a folder with certified copies and an electronic link. Do you want us to notify them? He asked. No, I said. Let the system speak first. Ledger, 1140, met attorney Singh. POA revoked, estate updated, fraud alerts placed, institutions routed through counsel, copies received. At home, I opened my laptop and drafted one email to the family thread and the orbit that had discovered its voice yesterday. Subject: Notice of boundary enforcement. I kept the body spare, effective immediately. I will not provide financial support now or in the future. Any attempt to use my name, accounts, or signature will be treated as fraud and reported to the appropriate institutions. All verification requests must be sent to my attorney of record. I added the attorney's contact, attached nothing, and pressed send. Then I closed the mail tab and did not wait for replies. On my desktop, I renamed the folder from Proof to Proof of Peace. Inside, I created a new text file titled Index and listed what existed: bank confirmations, insurance confirmations, HR note, call log, texts. I ejected the backup drive from last night, connected it again, and ran a fresh copy. When it finished, I placed the drive in the drawer beside the bank sleeve and locked it. Before closing the notebook, I wrote one more line: 1:05, broadcast sent, system engaged. Then I underlined the date and put down the pen. The afternoon light moved across the wall like a slow answer. The house was quiet. The work was done for today. By late afternoon, I needed air that wasn't recycled through my own decisions. I drove to the hardware store for nothing urgent: light bulbs, a roll of tape, and parked under a bare tree that scratched the sky. My father stepped from a sedan before I could kill the engine. My mother sat in the passenger seat holding a manila folder. They'd rehearsed this. He rapped his knuckles on my window. I lowered it an inch. "The bank gave us 3 days," he said, voice calm the way it gets right before it isn't. "Mara, we can't do this without you." My mother lifted the folder, pages already turned to the signature line. "Just sign here. We'll handle everything. No one has to know." "You're right," I said. "No one will because I'm not signing." He leaned closer. "You'll regret this. That man's turned you against your own family." "Caleb doesn't tell me what to do," I said. "You did, for 30 years. He blinked, not expecting the sentence to land where it did. I put the car in reverse, looked over my shoulder, and backed out. They stayed small in the rear view, 2 figures holding papers that would never have my name again. When I reached my apartment, something waited under my door, an unmarked envelope. Inside was a letter in Bianca's hand, all soft edges and nearly apologies. Between the folds, a receipt from a Florida resort, 2 rooms, 2 weeks after my mother cried about groceries. Total, a number that laughed at emergency. I set it on my desk beside the joint account closure and wrote a line in ledger: 5552, resort receipt enclosed with apology, evidence of non-need. At 7:18, my phone rang from an unfamiliar business number. "This is Thomas with Silverline Credit," a cheerful voice said. "We're calling to confirm your co-signature on the Davis mortgage application. Please return our call before noon tomorrow." I let him finish, asked him to repeat the company name, and hung up. Then I forwarded the voicemail to Attorney Singh with a 2-line note: "Unauthorized application, proceed." He called me back within 10 minutes. "You warned them in writing," he said. "Now we file fraud notices with the lender and your banks. We'll attach your prior notice and the bank confirmations. The system will do what people won't." Will it stop them? "It will flag any application bearing your identity. Some lenders call it blacklisting. Others use internal holds. Either way, the leverage ends." He sent over a brief for e-signature, concise, precise. I signed on my phone, watched the confirmation populate, and saved the PDF to Proof of Peace institutions. Ledger, 741, Silverline call, counsel filed fraud notices, identity flags placed. I put the phone down and felt the room tilt back to level. For years, my family's power lived in assumptions of my speed, my silence, my signature. Tonight, every assumption met a gate. Near 9, a final text from Bianca lit the screen. "This is insane. You're tearing us apart." I screenshotted, filed, and didn't answer. Outside, the parking lot lights hummed. Inside, the folder of certified copies sat where I'd left it, weighty and ordinary. The calls might keep coming, the forms might find new doors, but the hinge they needed, my name, unsecured, was gone. 2 weeks later, a neighbor from my parents' street sent a brief message. "Heads up, there's a for sale sign at their place. Looks like the bank's involved." I typed the address into a listing site. The status was bold and simple: foreclosed. Photos scrolled by without furniture, pale rectangles where frames had hung, a clean spot on the carpet where a coffee table once pretended to anchor the room. I didn't need to know the numbers. The picture said enough. Bianca texted an hour after I closed the tab. "Hope you're happy." I set the phone down and said to the empty room, "Finally, consequences found their owners." Then I wrote the line in ledger and put a small period after it that felt earned. The next morning, Attorney Singh called. "Update for you," he said. "Your fraud notices are active. Silver Line flagged and canceled the application. 2 other inquiries attempted to attach your identity this week. Both were auto-rejected. The banks placed internal holds. For most major lenders, any attempt to add you without your express consent will stall or die for the next 5 years." "Thank you," I said. "Please keep copies of everything." "They're already in your client portal," he replied. "And one more thing, your HR team pinged me. Another spoof call came in yesterday. They were ready, nothing left the system." After we hung up, I opened Proof of Peace and added a subfolder, Institutions Resolutions. I dragged the confirmations in and updated the index file. Silverline cancel, lender holds, HR spoof blocked. The list looked like a steady spine. That evening, Caleb came over with takeout and found me on the balcony with a blanket and the last of the winter light. We ate without rush. The city made its soft evening noises far enough away to sound like weather. "They'll cast you as the villain," he said finally. "I know. You okay with that?" "Villains have boundaries," I said. "Saints get drained." He smiled without triumph. "Then you're doing fine." After he left, I turned back to the desk. I plugged in the backup drive and exported everything: ledger scans, certified copies, confirmations, the HR notes. When the progress bar finished, I checked the folder tree twice, then a third time. I ejected the drive and placed it in the drawer beside the bank sleeve. 2 anchors, neither visible unless I chose. On the desktop, I made a decision I had been circling for days. I selected the working Proof of Peace folder, verified the drive copy once more, and pressed delete. Not a flourish, not a ritual, just removal. The files slipped into the system trash. I emptied it. The room stayed ordinary: a lamp, a quiet computer, a window holding the last blue of the day. My phone lay face down. It didn't buzz. I wrote the final line for the night. 9/12, archive exported, working copy deleted, not forgiveness, freedom. Then I closed the notebook and let the dark come in without knocking. The quiet held for weeks, the kind that doesn't ask to be noticed. Then a letter arrived, no return address, my mother's handwriting neat as ever. I stood at the kitchen counter and opened it with the back of a butter knife. "Mara, we didn't know how much we relied on you until we couldn't anymore. Your father isn't well. Bianca is struggling. We've made mistakes, but so have you. Maybe one day we can start over. Love, Mom. No apology, just balance sheets of blame." I folded the page along its crease and slid it into the drawer where I keep warranties and spare keys, things that might be useful again, but not today. I wrote one line in the notebook, "Letter received, no action," and closed the cover. Winter broke. On a Friday, we drove west to the coast, Caleb and I, a small bag each, and coffee in paper cups. The highway opened into salt air and low light, gulls floating like punctuation marks over the water. We walked the boardwalk and didn't talk much. In the evening, we ate chowder in a place with a brass bell and window glass that buckled the horizon. I slept like a normal person, No notifications, no mental math about accounts that weren't mine. On the last morning, we stood where the sand flattened the waves. Caleb watched me watch the water. "Do you ever feel guilty?" he asked. "Guilt was assigned," I said. "Peace I had to learn." He nodded like he'd been waiting for me to hear my own answer. Back in Portland, the mail had stacked itself in polite piles. A neighbor left a note about a package, nothing urgent. The apartment smelled like itself. I took the hard drive from the drawer and checked the label with the date, proof of peace. I didn't plug it in. I only wanted to know it was where I left it. I wrote the last entries in ledger without ceremony. Returned from coast, no calls, no crises. I capped the pen and set the notebook on the shelf beside tax returns and passports, documents of a life that belongs to me. Before bed, I printed a single sheet and slipped it into the glove box of my car. It wasn't legal, and it wasn't meant to be. At the top, I had typed in bold, "Bank of Mara Ellison, closed permanently, no co-signers, no reopenings, no emergency lines of credit." In the morning, the city was itself again. Garbage trucks, dog walkers, the thin sun of a forgiving day. I made coffee and let the kettle click off. Somewhere, someone would tell a story where I was the villain. They could. Stories are cheap when other people pay the bill. Mine isn't for sale anymore.